One day I was thumbing through podcasts for something to listen to when I came across a title description, The Psychology of Persuasion. As I listened, a very familiar name from my region started telling a story of his life as a real corporate spy. So of course, I had to contact him and get him on my podcast. Philadelphia native Robert Kerbeck joins me today to fill us in on the history, the lies, the run-ins with one certain celebrity, and why you need to jump to Amazon to pick up his books, Ruse, Lying the American Dream from Hollywood to Wall Street, and Malibu Burning, the real story behind LA's most devastating wildfire. Now, let's get to business. Hello, everyone. I am Tatiana Ryan, and this is the Businessy Podcast. Today, I have an awesome guest. His name is Robert Kerbeck, and he has had one of the most coolest jobs out there ever. Robert, thank you so much for stopping by today and telling us all about everything you've done in your life.
Thank you, Tatiana. It's a pleasure to be here. It's also a pleasure always to be with a fellow Philadelphian. Because that's my hometown and your hometown, and it turns out that your brother and I went to the same high school, so a lot of crazy coincidences.
Except I went to the high school you guys were big rivals with. So
that's right. And your high school, Council Rock High School, I always felt like they were the rich, snooty kids. Do you feel that? Do you agree with that or no?
Yeah, we still get that all the time. I still hear it all the time. No, you're a Council Rock girl. Yeah, I'm also a horse girl too. So it's like double whammy right there with people. Now, Robert, you are related to, obviously, the first thing everybody noticed about you is your last name.
Yes.
Give us a little history.
Sure.
Because there's a big dealership and there's a whole lot going on there.
Yeah, so it's a fascinating story. The Kerbeck name was originally Kerbeckian. We are Armenian, or in the case, in my case, I'm now part Armenian, but the name Kerbeck is the original Armenian name. And my great grandfather, Garibed Kerbeckian, escaped the Armenian genocide and came to Philadelphia and started a business repairing horse carriages for wealthy Philadelphians. He saw the writing on the wall and he switched and became an automobile mechanic and started something called the Kerbeck Garage. I recently found an advertisement in a Philadelphia paper from 1911 for the Kerbeck Garage. And then his kids, one of whom was my grandfather, and the other one was FC, the FC Kerbeck, Kerbeck Cadillac. They were brothers, and they basically started car dealerships. And so there were like two different branches of the Kerbeck family. My grandfather had dealerships that were in the city proper of Philadelphia, and then my father and uncle took those over. And then FC went out to New Jersey over the Talconi-Palmyra Bridge, and he started a bunch of dealerships out there. And when I was in college, I was in college at Penn, and when I graduated, I was supposed to take over the Kerbeck dealerships, and my father and uncle had two dealerships in Philadelphia. And I was supposed to take them over. I was the oldest son, but I fell in love with acting in college. And so I wanted to move to New York to be an actor. And as your audience knows, actors need survival jobs. And I moved to New York. And who stumbles into a career as a corporate spy? But that's what happened to me.
Well, that's the cool thing, is because being from the Philadelphia region, we are so close to New York that people just commute right up there. And that is actually some of the coolest history I have ever heard. I'm part Ukrainian. Obviously, immigrant was my mother's side of the family. But so many people came over here. And it's interesting with the Armenians, how they changed their last name, kind of like the Irish did at times, because they weren't very accepted.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And it's funny because a lot of people that don't know, when they hear Kerbeck, they think it's German. And of course, I kind of look German. And we'll get into my facility with the German accent that I used as a corporate spy to great success. But they thought the name Kerbeck was German. And even though I don't know why my great grandfather dropped the IAN that signifies Armenian last names, Kerbeckian, Garabedian. But I think it's because Philadelphia had a large German population and Kerbeck sounded so German. And when you're an immigrant starting a business, Kerbeck Garage, you want your business to be successful. And I think he felt like if it was Kerbeck Garage, people would come in and think it was a German-run business, and Germans were very accepted in Philadelphia back then, whereas Armenians and other more recent immigrants were not. So yeah, it is. It's really wild how immigrants had to do things to assimilate and be successful.
Now, going into, well, breaking bad news to your family that you really didn't want to be part of the car dealership, and then skipping up to New York and getting those side jobs and everything, which led you into being a corporate spy. How exactly did you fall into that?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned when I gave my father the news that I was going to move to New York, he definitely was devastated. There was a placard on the outside of the dealership building that said since 1899, because I'm assuming that's when the Kerbeck Garage was started. I found that ad from 1911, but I think it started even before that. So he was devastated, and that's a big part of my book. My book is called Ruse: Lying the American Dream from Hollywood to Wall Street, and it's the story of how I became arguably the world's greatest corporate spy. But it started out very humbly. I just was a broke actor and I needed a job. I moved to New York. A friend of mine, I only knew one person in all of New York City. He had this strange job and he mentioned it very briefly, and then he shut up right away, like he knew he'd made a mistake. Like he'd been told, do not tell anybody about this, do not talk about this. And he said something very quickly. And then I said, whoa, hey, wait a second. What is this job? I'm broke. I need a job. Get me an interview. And so he very reluctantly got me an interview, and I went to the Upper East Side. And as your audience probably knows, the Upper East Side's kind of the wealthiest area of Manhattan. It's old money Manhattan. And I take the elevator. It's a doorman building. I'm living in Hell's Kitchen in a cave with two other guys. Go to a doorman building, take the elevator up to the penthouse. This woman opens the door, ushers me into the nicest apartment I've ever been in. So right away, I knew whatever her business was, it was lucrative. But we have this very strange interview. She never tells me anything about the job. She never asks me anything about my skills. She sends me on my way. I figure I blew it. But my buddy calls me and he says, you got the job, but don't get too excited because no one is able to do this job. And the next day I went out to Brooklyn to begin training, and I quickly learned that what our job was to call major corporations and use our acting skills, voices, characters, accents, improvisational skills to get people inside major publicly traded companies and very secretive private companies to release secret corporate intelligence that was worth, forget about millions of dollars, forget about tens of millions, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Now, being from the Kerbeck name, how do you keep that a secret? Because obviously you had to keep it a secret.
Yeah. Well, you just didn't tell anybody. People would say, well, what do you do? And I'd say, oh, I'm in research, or, and if they'd say, well, what does that mean?
Something boring.
Yeah, something boring, and every once in a while I'd say I'm in corporate intelligence. And, if I'd had a drink, and I got, I'm in corporate intelligence, and they'd say, well, what is that? And I'd say, well, if I told you, I'd have to take you out back and shoot you. And then that was the end of that,
Mm-hmm. Now, did you go to school for acting also? Or did you?
It's funny. I was an English major at Penn, which of course is interesting in that that's kind of where I started. And then I went very far away from being a writer, an English major. I went to acting, went car sales, because I did work briefly for my dad's dealership, then corporate spy. And now here I am. I've circled back to writing later in life, and now I've written 2 books, and I'm really grateful. They've both won National Book Awards, and Ruse is in development for a TV series, which is pretty amazing. So it's like back to the beginning.
That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. What skills did you use while you were in the corporate espionage job that you learned from acting? Like you had mentioned, you needed to do voices, you need to, you had to read people, I guess. I mean, did you ever have to have one of those Mission Impossible moments where you're face to face with somebody trying to get information out of them?
Yeah, many times. But here's the thing that's fascinating. In the beginning, we would go in person. So we'd go to conferences, we'd go to a bar where we knew certain firms hung out. We would do those things. But what we learned very early on was that we actually were able to use the anonymity of the good old fashioned phone call. And of course, when I was doing this in the 90s and 2000s, the phone call wasn't old fashioned. Today, it's old fashioned. But we'll circle back to how the old-fashioned phone call is having a comeback in terms of social engineering or what I call rusing. But we learned that you could get so much more information over the phone because we would be pretending to be executives with this company in different offices, right? Because all of these firms, they have offices all over the world, right? They have offices in England, in Germany, in Japan, and so we could be from anywhere, So this is Gerhard calling from the office in Frankfurt, Germany. We have the European Union regulators, and we need some information from the States. And see how you're smiling and you're laughing? That's what everybody would do when they would hear Gerhard, and they'd go, "Oh, hey, Gerhard, buddy. Whoa. Oh, you're from the Frankfurt. Oh, yeah. I've seen your name on papers," or they look you up on the company directory. "Oh, my God. Oh, yeah. You run legal for Europe. Oh, hey, what's going on? How can I help you?" Right? Because what are the odds that someone is calling pretending to be someone with a German accent? Right? It's just nobody's gonna think that. And so what are people going to tell Gerhard? Anything he wants to know. Anything he wants to know.
Oh my goodness. Now this was predominantly the financial industry, correct?
It started because the woman who hired me, her specialty was Wall Street. So we were getting secrets on the largest Wall Street firms. But later on, when I got my own spying firm, we were hired by every industry. I worked in tech, pharmaceutical, industrial, including automotive, which was kind of ironic. I did spying assignments in every country in the world: Brazil, Russia, obviously China, obviously Japan, obviously Europe, Latin America, anywhere where people wanted to get secrets on their rivals, because basically we're being hired by companies who want to, I'm a big football guy, fly Eagles fly. And imagine if you could get the playbook on your competitor 2 or 3 days before the Super Bowl, or 2 or 3 days before the conference championship game, or 2 or 3 days before any game. How valuable would that be? And corporate America is just as cutthroat as the NFL. And so corporate executives are always trying to learn what their rivals are doing, what they're paying people, what their new product is, what they're going to price the product, who they're trying to win as a client, what they're going to offer that client as a, anything and everything like that is incredibly valuable information. In addition, we would determine who the top people were at a company, right? Because again, going back to football, Tom Brady was with the New England Patriots. He left the New England Patriots. He went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What happened? They won a Super Bowl, right? Because he was top talent. So if you could identify top talent at your rivals and then steal them, how valuable would that be? And so we would identify who the rock stars were at companies. LinkedIn has maybe everybody's names, even though they don't have everybody's name, because there are many executives that don't even list themselves on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn still, even today, can't tell you who the top people are at a rival company, who the top salespeople are, who the top bankers are, who the top developers are. And we would learn the firm's internal metrics that they use to rank their own employees.
You mentioned technology and now like getting into LinkedIn and things like that. Has technology made spying easier or harder now, you think?
Both. And every time there was a new technological advancement, we spies, the 2 or 3 that, we knew each other, we'd go, "Oh my God, this is the end. It's over. We're never going to be able to spy because they can recognize this. They can identify that. They can, And then we quickly learned that, wait a second, we can use this to our advantage. So for example, one of the big things was, when caller ID came out. So now you can see who's calling you. And so if it's a number you don't recognize, if it's an anonymous number, you're just not going to answer the call. Well, of course, now there's a thing called call spoofing, right? Which, we get these calls all the time, which appear to be from numbers of people we know. And so now you can call spoof a number. And so somebody's going to pick up because they recognize the number and they think it's someone that they know. So that's just one example of how the technology that was designed to stop kind of spying actually ends up enabling spying.
It's kind of like a chat GPT movement that everybody's having right now. Should we be afraid of it or should we not be afraid of it? If you use it the correct way, it's better for you.
Yeah. Well, think about this. Now I can use AI. So in the past, I had to call and listen to, in this example, Gerhardt, who ran legal for this firm. And I'd hear, this is Gerhardt. I'm not here. Please leave a message, whatever Gerhardt's saying. And by the way, it would have been in German. But then I would hear that and I'd go, oh, I can do that accent. And then I would practice his accent. So then when I would call someone and pretend to be Gerhardt, I would sound like him. So even if someone had spoken to him, they would go, oh, it's Gerhardt, right? Well, now with AI, you don't have to be a Juilliard trained actor to imitate someone's voice. You could just use AI to do it. And if I can use AI to call and be your boss or your, partner or your mother or whomever, and you hear that voice, what are you not going to tell that person? Because you believe it's them. And if they say, hey, my car broke down, I lost my wallet, can you give me your credit card number? Because I got to do, I got to call and get help. Sure, mom. Sure, boss. And now all of a sudden you've been tricked because of AI.
But also in your book, Rude, Flying the American Dream from Hollywood to Wall Street, you had experience with celebrities also. It wasn't just business people. You did a lot of different things with a lot of big names, but there's one specific big name, and that's kind of why I brought up reading people that you met just right before something huge happened. Tell us about that little story.
Sure. Yeah. So, I was a working actor. That's the thing is, in the beginning when I was doing the spying, believe it or not, we were getting $8 an hour. And it was just a survival job. It was just to pay the bills. And I was a working actor. I did, off-Broadway shows. I was the lead opposite James Gandolfini from The Sopranos. I was the lead opposite Callista Flockhart, who's married to Harrison Ford. I became a member of the Actors Studio and was hanging out with Al Pacino and Paul Newman. And then eventually I moved to Los Angeles for pilot season, and then I stayed and did 50 major TV shows. If it was a TV show in the 90s and early 2000s, I was on it. ER, NYPD Blue, Melrose Place, Star Trek, Chicago Hope. And at one point, again, actors, need to work. My manager called me up and he said, hey, I got a job in an exercise video. They need some guys. And I said, oh, no. I can't dance. I'm the worst dancer ever. And my manager said, no, it's not dancing. It's an exercise video for guys. It's O.J. Simpson's exercise video. And I said, O.J. Simpson? Oh my God, I love O.J. Yeah. I remember as a kid watching him play football. And so I go to this exercise video and supposedly, it's for guys. We're going to be doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, playing some basketball. And I show up and it's the studio is a dance floor, and I'm introduced to someone who's the choreographer, and he lines us up. He lines OJ up. There are two beautiful women that are in dance skins. I'm wearing like a tank top and basketball shorts. And the choreographer says, okay, let's everybody do this dance number. And he demonstrates the routine and everybody does it right away. Even OJ kind of gets it. And I'm so pathetic. I'm so bad. The choreographer stops everything and he walks over and he's like, how did you get this job? Like, what are you doing here? And he's about to fire me. And OJ says, no. You can't fire Rob because Rob's dancing is so bad. It's making mine look good. And
kidding.
And it was funny. That is really a thing in Hollywood. Rule number one is make your star look good. And OJ was nervous that his dancing wasn't going to look good because there were two professional dancers in it. So he needed somebody that looked so bad that all of a sudden it was making his movement look good. And somehow that bonded us. Somehow that connected us. And the rest of the shoot, he was constantly pulling me aside, telling me stories. He had just done a pilot for NBC called Frogmen. And in the series that was gonna become a series, and he was gonna be one of the stars, he played a knife expert. Isn't that unbelievable?
Yeah.
In retrospect, right? So, he's telling me about the show. Oh, I'm going to get you on the show. You're going to be, I'm like, oh my God, OJ's going to get me on Frogmen. But one of the things that started to happen on the shoot, which was unbelievable and so disturbing, was he started to sexually harass one of the female dancers. And of course, at the time, I didn't know who Nicole Brown Simpson was, but shortly after the video, I think it was a week or so, the murders happened. And of course, Nicole Brown Simpson's picture was all over television. And I realized how much Nicole Brown Simpson resembled this female dancer in the exercise video. It was like a double. So, of course, I didn't know that at the time, but he was harassing this woman. I pulled her aside and I said, look, this is terrible. You don't have to put up with this. We can call the Screen Actors Guild. We can get a monitor, come down here and be on set to protect you. But, this is back in the day where that behavior, unfortunately, was sort of accepted, or not sort of accepted. It was accepted. And she didn't want to get fired. Maybe she wanted to be able to do more videos, and that she felt like she'd be blackballed, which she probably would have been. Yeah. And so she said, no, don't do anything. I'm just gonna put up with it. But it was, it was incredibly offensive. And I saw in that moment, though, of course, nobody is thinking this behavior is going to lead him to murder someone, but you could see the way he was treating her was so disrespectful, was so offensive, that you could see that if she had kind of, started to push back, he would have gotten aggressive. He would have been, he would have fired her, or he would have given her a hard time, or he would have done something. And then, of course, in retrospect, now I understand why he had domestic abuse issues with Nicole Brown Simpson. And then obviously that led to the type of rage, that caused him to murder two people. And I was right there in that moment in time and saw it in my face. Now, of course, you couldn't quite identify it, but you knew something was really wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move on to something a little funnier and lighter hearted. As we had said, with marketing and between acting and what you actually did, there's a really, really popular Bush's Baked Beans came out with a dog that had the secret. What do you think every time you see that commercial? Because it is just so funny. But you were actually in there. You're actually like trying to find these little nooks and crannies and secrets that everybody had.
Yeah, I mean, look, think about it. If you could identify the early designers of the iPad, right, back in the day, and you were able to steal one or two of those individuals and bring them over to your company, how much money would that be worth? Forget about, I mean, that's even beyond billions of dollars, right? So that's how valuable this information is if you can find something out, if you could find a secret, if you could find, anything that's going to give you a leg up. And I'm here to tell you, I did an interview recently and they said, Robert, do most corporations hire spies? I said, no, most corporations don't hire spies. All corporations hire spies, and they do so through intermediaries. They don't do it directly. They'll hire a spy through their consulting company will hire the spy, or their recruiting company will hire the spy, because they need to have plausible deniability. So if they get caught, if their spy gets caught, it's not traced directly back to them.
How do you get paid? Is there like a set payment, or do you guys negotiate depending on certain things?
That's a great question. Yeah. So because every project was bespoke, every project was custom in terms of what they wanted to know, how much information they wanted, how many offices they wanted us to research. Every project would be priced differently. But, I'm here to tell you that $8 an hour survival job, by the end of my spying career, I was making $2 million a year.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. Now, a lot of companies deal with NDAs to
Mhm.
protect themselves, to protect from people saying with anything. Have you ever seen a company fire back when they've had an NDA on someone that did talk?
That did give information.
Mm-hmm.
Most times the company wouldn't know that the person gave the information, because remember, you know, I am, I am tricking these people. I'm rusing these people, hence the
Mm-hmm.
title of my book. I'm rusing them to give the information. So they're not giving it to me willingly. They're making a mistake. And of course, we see with cybersecurity today, you know, obviously I'm not a spy anymore, and now I speak to corporations and advise them on how not to fall victims, so that they're, hacked, phished,
Mm-hmm.
scammed, duped, or what I like to call rused. And I'm here, to tell individuals and companies, so much time and money is spent on the technical side of thing, of protecting the technology, right? Encryption and firewalls and networks and servers, but very little attention is given to the human side. And if I can trick one person inside a firm to release sensitive private information, to give me a password, all of the money that you've spent to protect your technology is wasted, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's something I talk a lot about. Is that I hack people. I don't even need to know how to hack your computers if I can hack your people.
Now, what you've seen, what we've all seen in the news lately with FTX, with the banks going down, with all this stuff, have you ever had one of those moments where you're like, gee, I wish somebody would have called me? I could have helped this whole situation.
Well, I mean, so you remember the crash of 2008, right? The worst
Mm-hmm.
financial disaster in our lifetimes, the Great Recession. Only the Great Depression was worse. I basically saw that thing coming. I like to say, I might not have been the only person in the world that saw the crash coming, but I was certainly the only actor in the world that saw it coming. Because here we were doing all of this spying, and so I was learning about all of these financial derivatives, these mortgage-backed securities, and the problems with them, and how people were being given loans willy-nilly, and eventually there was going to be a problem. And I kept going, man, this is going to be bad, this is going to be bad. And so being a spy, you see things ahead of when something bad is going to happen, and conversely when something good is going to happen. I would learn about all kinds of things that were, very positive for businesses and economies at the same time, because you're a spy. You're getting tremendous insight into, you're getting to go behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm. Now, were there ever like you would have to have a meeting with somebody, and like as you just told the story about your first meeting for your first job, did you ever have to like you need to know what you're looking for? Were you ever hired in an industry where you had to have some schooling as to what you were going to be looking for?
Well, I mean, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds sometimes like, oh, well, I just pick up the phone and say, hey, this is Galhot, tell me,
Mm-hmm.
and I just get all this information like that. No, it doesn't work like that. We would have to do a lot of research. We would have to do a lot of homework,
Mm-hmm.
because, if I'm going to call a company, and I'm going to call an executive at a company and expect him or her to believe me and believe my story, I have to know everything about that company. I've got to read their press releases, their annual reports. I have to study their stock price. I have to know, did the football team in their town win the day before? Was there a terrible accident that caused a traffic jam that made it, is there a big conference coming up? Anything and everything, so that in my improvisational phone call, I can use those things so that the person on the other end of the phone goes, well, of course this person's legitimate. How would they have known about the traffic accident that made half the company late to work yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden now it's like, okay, well, this person's real. They know this stuff, right? They know about the offsite conference in Wyoming in 2 weeks or whatever, right? And so you would have to do a lot of homework to prepare yourself, because sometimes you'd only get one shot at this information. There'd only be maybe one person that knew the new deal that was about to be announced, and you had to get that person on the phone, and you had to get them to tell you that information. So you had to have your story locked down.
Now, did you ever have anybody or you yourself blow your cover?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Look, you're doing the best you can to get this information. And, I like to say there's this very funny thing that 9 out of 10 people, and you're listening right now, you're going, oh, I wouldn't fall for this stuff. No, I wouldn't give this information out. 9 out of 10 people think they would not. And I'm here to tell you that 9 out of 10 people give it up. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. We all, even me, we all think we're smarter than we are. We all think, I had somebody the other day trying to pull a ruse on me. It was a pretty darn good ruse. And they had me thinking for a moment. They had me kind of going, and then finally I started to do some homework. I took my time, because that's a big thing that hackers are looking to do, is they're looking to get you to rush, to click on something right away. That's what they're using. They're saying, hey, it's an emergency. Oh my God, you got to do this right now. You've been hacked. You better click on this link. They get you to panic, right? Or they're offering you some opportunity that is so good. You're like, oh my God, this is great. This would be great for me, And again, if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is, So yeah, I think everybody out there has to be careful. As you said rightly a few minutes ago, the world is getting more and more challenging with this kind of hacking, phishing, scamming, duping, rusing. It's getting worse. Ransomware attacks are, an everyday occurrence for businesses now. And then, of course, all of us as individuals have to really be, vigilant in protecting our information, so that people aren't getting into our accounts and our bank accounts and our credit cards.
Now, besides picking up the book, obviously, Ruse, what other advice would you give people to, if they have somebody that's fishing for information?
Yeah, look, the first thing is put the device down. Close the laptop, put the phone down, walk away, and just think about it. Think about it. I call it the 30-second rule. It's like, you just think about it for 30 seconds. 99 times out of 100, you're not going to fall for it now. You're not, because you thought about it for a second. What happens is we live in this world of click, 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 forward, send, text, text, text. It's so fast that we don't take the time when that crazy email comes in, or that crazy phone call, or that crazy text. We just go, oh, I better click. Too late. So you have to catch yourself. And that's why I say, you see something funny, just put it down and walk away for a second, because we're just in the habit of clicking too quickly, and then we just get in big trouble. So that's the first thing I tell people. And then the other thing, as I say, you can recognize scams because they're almost always going to try to put pressure on you related to time. It's an emergency. You need to do this right now. You need to call us right now. You need to click on this link right now. And no, you don't have to do it right now. You don't have to do it right now. If you've been hacked, 5 seconds, 30 seconds is not going to make any difference. You know what I mean? So take your time, put the device down, think about it, show it to a friend. You know what I mean? Call a friend, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many things you can do to double check. You can Google now scams too. So when you see the scam come in, you can Google and say, hey, American Savings Bank just sent me a note that I'm overdrawn, and they're saying this. Is that a common scam? And all of a sudden it comes up, yes, American Savings Bank just announced the other day there's been this, scam going, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, they're trying to get me now, right? So there are a lot of things you can do to protect yourself.
Talking about emergencies, let's move on to your second book, Malibu Burning. That is an absolutely devastating subject. I watched a lot of happen in the horse facility at San Luis Rey with the horses. That was in 2018. It's such devastation. And you were right there on the front lines.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, it was, terrible. My family, we fought the Malibu fire. We saved our home. 17 of 19 homes on our street burned to the ground. I wrote an essay about it for the Los Angeles Times, and then a publisher read that essay and asked if I'd write a book about the Malibu fires. And so I wrote this book, Malibu Burning. And it was really cool because, as terrible as the fire was, and, people died, animals died, people lost their homes. And when you lose your home in a fire, you lose everything you ever had. You know what I mean? It's not like a fire a house fire back in the East Coast where the kitchen burns, or you know what I mean, and, one of the bedrooms burns. It's like your house is incinerated. I mean, everything you ever owned, your car is melted. It's really unbelievable. But the thing that was inspirational about writing the book was how the community came together, and how people, an old couple in their 80s were saving homes, putting out fires with their feet. 4 or 5 guys in Paradise Cove, which is this trailer park on the ocean. They saved 300, trailers from burning by themselves with no help from the fire department. 2 women saved a neighborhood of 13 homes by themselves with no help from the fire department.
Wow.
So these were just ordinary people that came together. And, of course, it's Malibu, and everybody thinks everyone in Malibu is rich and famous. And I'm here to tell you that that is far from the case, especially for people that live on the land side of the Pacific Coast Highway, the PCH. If you live on the ocean side of the PCH, yeah, you're probably pretty rich and famous. But if you live on the land side, up in the hills and the nooks and crannies, there are retired firefighters, retired sheriffs, teachers, broke surfers. And unfortunately, those are the people that lost their homes in this fire. And those were also the people that came together and just did incredible things, because there was almost no help from the authorities. The authorities were just completely overwhelmed. And that's one of the lessons that I talk a lot about in the book is, whatever the tragedy is, whether it's floods, whether it's tornadoes, whether it's wildfires, which unfortunately are getting worse and worse, you need to know your neighbors. And even if you don't love your neighbors, you need to know them and try to be friends, because when there's an event, a catastrophic event, the only ones you can count on besides yourself are your neighbors.
That is so true.
That's the big lesson about Malibu burning is, man, know your neighbors, because they will save your life. They will save your home. And in the Malibu fire, they did it over and over again.
Knowing your neighbors, you are very, very surrounded by so many different things that you're doing right now in California with your 2 books. Which have won a lot of awards. What else are you doing in California right now?
Well,
you said a show. Ruse is being made into a show.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm really having a lot of fun with is, I'm becoming, believe it or not, at my age, a content creator. You're a content creator, so you know what this is about. And I've started a literary salon at Soho House Malibu. And basically, I bring an author in that has a book out, and we talk about their book at Soho House Malibu, which, of course, is this gorgeous place right on the ocean next door to Nobu. And I've been getting all of these incredible authors. So I just had Stephen A. Smith, who, your audience knows is the most famous sports media figure in the world, Stephen A. I had him because he's got a memoir out about his career. It's fantastic. I just had one of the members from Maroon 5, the incredible band Maroon 5 that's, had massive hits and won a zillion Grammy Awards. I had the drummer just wrote a book about his career with Maroon 5. I had him. I'm working on trying to get Tom Hanks. I'm trying to get Matthew McConaughey. So that's really become this super fun thing for me.
Now, how often are these meetings at Soho House?
Once a month. I do them once a month.
Yeah. Okay. And who do you have coming up next?
We're taking this summer off because summer in Malibu is bonkersville, as anybody who's visited Malibu knows. So Soho House is just packed 24/7. And literary salon, you want it to be packed, but you want people to be listening a little bit to,
Right.
So we're going to pick back up in September. And I think in September, I hate to say this stuff because, you never know, who comes through and who doesn't come through, but I'm working on a bunch of really big people.
That's awesome. Now you've got the 2 books, which will be linked in the description. I'm going to link them. They're out on Amazon. Going to be easy peasy for everybody to pick them up. Where else can people find you on social media, since you are now that content creator?
Yeah. I say, some of the social media platforms, they just don't work for me, even though I can appreciate them. The ones that I enjoy, I really love Instagram because I can, have some fun with some videos. And I'll force you to watch some videos of me surfing every once in a while because somebody's got to watch me. And then LinkedIn, obviously, because Ruse is about corporate spying and corporate espionage. People on LinkedIn are just fascinated by that subject. We all know the Russians spy on the Chinese and the Chinese spy on us, but most people are just shocked to find out how much spying goes on in corporate America. And so LinkedIn is a platform I use a lot. And one last thing, I tell people, if you go to my website, which is just my name, robertkerbeck.com, you can email me right from the site. There's no filter. There's no assistant reading it. I respond to everything. And so for the listeners out there that are looking to pivot to a lucrative new career as a corporate spy, I'm out of the business, but I can give you tips on how to get into that business if you're interested. And I'm here to tell you there is plenty of work for corporate spies.
Really? And that's a good thing to know. Awesome. Thank you so much, Robert. I greatly appreciate this. And anybody, they can email you to become a spy also if they're good at it. And maybe you'll just give them some tips also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, happy to do it.
Okay. I will let you go. Thank you so much, Robert.
Bye.